All right, as promised, I'm going to introduce you to my favorite and the most talented of the CIA assets out there that is doing disinformation today. And he has been doing it since the 60s, I think. And his name is Jack Sarfati. So, Sarfati has been involved in lots of different CIA operations, specifically psychological warfare programs, and such as Stargate. And he was eventually part of Reagan's Star Wars program. I'll leave a little link for you where he actually goes through his whole history, but it's recounted in How the Hippies Saved Physics. It's a book that involves him and one of the subjects of the most recent 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics. Back in the 75 era, he was actually part of this little group, and one of the buddies in this group was one of the winners of the 2022 Nobel, John Clauser. Let me tell you a little bit about Jack. He's actually the character that Doc Emmett Brown from Back to the Future is based on. And I'm pretty sure there's this new like cartoon kind of series on right now called Inside Job. It's all about conspiracy theories and things. And I think he's actually the father in that's kind of like one of the main characters in it as well. And while he's sort of regarded as this sort of wild man, and I think he keeps that sort of persona on purpose, he's actually like a really really smart guy. I mean, like really really, like few people on the planet understand as much about physics as this guy does. But that's the thing, is he's so talented that he is dangerous. Like for instance, I've been doing this investigation for 20 years, and I've run into and been able to talk to, like, you would be amazed at the people I've been able to talk to. One of them is a Nobel laureate in physics, and they're kind of running in the same circles. And he actually talked about how much Jack like really is like onto something with all the different programs that he's pursuing. But that's the issue, is Jack has been involved in the CIA intelligence and disinformation campaigns for so many decades. He's been right there. And that's why I want to tell you about this Nobel in 2022 and how it can be traced back to Jack's disinformation campaign. So this 2022 Nobel in physics on Bell inequalities, well, it can be traced back to John Clauser and Jack's affiliation back in 1975, because they're the ones who really, really brought out and made this thing popular that gives us this whole idea that reality isn't real. Why am I saying that all of his CIA buddies are high-fiving him over this most recent Nobel? Because every country in the world, every modern country in the world is kind of in a race, like the space race and like, different arms races for computing technology. And this is directly related to computer technology and related back to the ether, like I've talked about. So he's covering up physics in general, he's covering up quantum computing, and I also think there's something having to do with advanced propulsion that he's covering up as well, because he's been doing all this stuff about the UAPs, all those things that the government recently said that, oh, hey, this is a real thing, and there's this, propulsion system that works, way differently than it should. And he's right at the edge of talking about how that should theoretically work. And so he is just a master of disinformation. Just like I talked about in my other videos, the trick is to twist history. So you've been hearing about all this reality isn't real, scientists have proved it thing. But the thing is, that's all based on a guy named John Stuart Bell's Bell inequalities. And the thing is, what you find out is, just like I told you about how Einstein said space without ether is unthinkable, 15 years after he supposedly did away with it. And then what you find out is that Bell also is constantly talking about how this idea that reality isn't real is completely a choice, that it's bullshit, that we don't need this idea at all for quantum physics to work. And supposedly this is all based on his work, that we've got this, magical weirdness going on. So once again, it's a purposeful confusion by making sure people don't know the real history behind it. Let me read you a little quote from Bell about this whole crazy nonsense and what he really thought about it, just in case you know a little bit about this topic. Why is the pilot wave picture ignored in textbooks? Should it not be taught, not as the only way, but as an antidote to the prevailing complacency, to show us that vagueness, subjectivity, and indeterminism are not forced on us by experimental facts, but by deliberate theoretical choice? Now, he said that in 1982, 20 years after the Bell inequalities thing. So here's the thing. he also knew about the ether. Here's another quote from him. For me, it's a dilemma. I think it's a deep dilemma, and the resolution of it will not be trivial. It will require a substantial change in the way we look at things. But I would say that the cheapest resolution is something like going back to relativity as it was before Einstein. When people like Lorentz Poincaré thought that there was an ether, a preferred frame of reference, but that our measuring instruments were distorted by motion in such a way that we could not detect motion through the ether. So here it is, once again, it's the ether and all these other things. They're doing it all at the same time. There's one guy, well, I'll tell you about more guys here coming up, but this is one guy I happen to know and have interacted with personally. Well, okay, we've gotten in fights and he's insulted me a whole lot online, so, I'm not sorry, Jack.